The film kicks off on Christmas Eve. A sweet little girl named Juliet thinks she hears Santa Claus up on the roof. Her mum, Jennifer, gently takes Juliet back to her room, reassuring her that there's nothing to be afraid of. But later that night, Juliet hears those noises again. She sneaks downstairs and sees what looks like Santa placing presents under the Christmas tree. Juliet is instantly filled with dread and runs to hide as she witnesses Art pull a gruesome axe from his bag. Frozen in fear, Juliet watches as Art enters her brother Timmy's room, and the horrifying sounds of him hacking Timmy to pieces fill the silence. Next, Art goes into her parents' room and begins plunging the axe into their father, Mark. Jennifer wakes up in sheer terror and frantically searches for her children. Her heart shatters as she sees Timmy's mutilated remains before Art brutally attacks and chops her up too. In a chillingly casual manner, Art then takes the cookies and milk that Juliet had lovingly left out for Santa. He then discovers the little girl hiding under the kitchen sink. Fast forward 5 years. This is right after the events of the last movie. Officer Evans stumbles upon Art's decapitated body. In a horrifying twist, the body suddenly comes back to life and rips Evans' head off, placing it on its own shoulders. This gruesome act allows Art to walk freely on the streets on Halloween night. Meanwhile, at the asylum, the possessed Victoria has given birth to Art's severed head. The two begin a gruesome feast, devouring the poor nurse who discovered them. Guard Burke then comes across this horrific scene. For a fleeting moment, Victoria appears to regain control, telling Burke in a distressed voice that Art forced her to commit this atrocity. But the evil entity quickly reasserts its control, and Art and Vicky brutally tear Burke's face apart before escaping the asylum. They find refuge in an abandoned house. Art sits ominously in a rocking chair by the window, while Vicky, in a disturbing act, takes a shard of broken mirror and slashes her wrists in a bathtub. In the present day, we meet Sienna. She's being picked up from a psychiatric ward by her uncle Greg. She's going to stay with him, her aunt Jess, who is also her mother's sister, and their daughter Gabby. Gabby is absolutely thrilled to see Sienna, viewing her as the big sister she's always wanted. However, Sienna is still deeply traumatized and haunted by visions of people like her friend Brooke, appearing as she did after Art brutally murdered her. Meanwhile, Jonathan is away at college, dealing with his own challenges, including his obnoxious roommate. Cole's girlfriend Mia is really keen to meet Jonathan. She runs a true crime podcast and is fascinated to hear firsthand what it was like for someone so close to Art's horrific rampage. Later, Sienna calls Jonathan to let him know she's been released from the ward. Meanwhile, 2 demolition workers arrive at the abandoned house where Art and Vicky sought refuge. The younger worker discovers Art still sitting and staring blankly out the window, completely covered in cobwebs. Nearby, Vicky's body has been decaying in the bathtub, submerged in her own filth. The older worker then finds Vicky, who suddenly springs back to life and viciously stabs him in the neck with the shard of mirror. Art also reawakens and brutally attacks the younger worker, repeatedly stabbing him until he chillingly peels the skin off his skull. After this gruesome scene, Art gathers some tools, including a container of liquid nitrogen, which he callously tests out on an unsuspecting rat. Back home, Sienna tries her best to connect with her family, but the trauma she endured still casts a long shadow, even with her medication. She spends time with Gabby but gently warns her against reading her personal journal entries. Sienna also finds a connection with Jess, who deeply misses her sister, Sienna's mother. Later, Art ends up at a bar. There, he encounters a man named Charlie dressed as Santa Claus. Art joins Charlie, along with another patron named Smokey and the bartender, Eddie. The mood takes a dark turn when Art suddenly spits a drink in Charlie's face and then shockingly urinates on his lap. Charlie, understandably enraged, tries to fight Art. Eddie steps in to confront him, but Art coldly shoots him in the neck before blasting Smokey's brains out. He then ties a terrified Charlie to a chair. As Charlie pleads for his life, Art cruelly uses the liquid nitrogen to freeze his arm and leg before shattering them. In a final horrifying act, Art freezes Charlie's face, smashing it and ripping off his beard. Sienna joins Gabby at the mall, but she's immediately startled when she hears the familiar Clown Cafe song. Her unease intensifies when she sees Art walking by, wearing a blood-soaked Santa mask and waving directly at Sienna, making sure she knows it's him. Later, Sienna meets up with Jonathan for a meal, hoping to reconnect with him. However, their meeting is interrupted by Cole and Mia. Cole is as obnoxious as ever, but when Mia approaches Sienna about being on her podcast, Sienna finally snaps. She loudly expresses her anger and disgust at how people have turned the horrific murders into sensationalized entertainment. Later, Sienna and Jonathan have a private argument. Sienna insists she saw Art again, but Jonathan remains unconvinced, suggesting they both try to move on from the past for good. This escalates when Sienna brings up letters that Jonathan wrote to her, mentioning the little pale girl and how their father also seemingly experienced visions of demons. A flashback then shows a lighter moment where Jonathan reacts playfully while giving a young Sienna a drawing he made. Determined to end the nightmare, Sienna resolves to return to the Terrifier location. Her hope lies in retrieving the sword she used to previously defeat Art, believing it's the only way to kill him and Vicky for good. Meanwhile, Art, now clad in Charlie's Santa outfit, arrives at the mall and fills in for the actual mall Santa. His interactions are unsettling as he hands out bizarre and inappropriate gifts to several children, eventually leading security to force him out due to his creepy behaviour. Moments later, a little boy excitedly grabs a discarded package and opens it, triggering a devastating bomb that kills numerous parents and children. When Sienna returns home, she's upset to discover that Gabby has gone through her journal despite Sienna's explicit warning. Gabby is apologetic, but Sienna vehemently denies the violent, art-rated content she had written. However, Sienna's denial turns to horror as she watches a news report on the mall bombing and hears a witness chillingly describe Art's appearance. Greg, realizing the gravity of the situation, calls Jonathan for help, and Jonathan immediately sets out to pick him up. Art then makes his way to the college, where Cole and Mia are engrossed in a conversation about getting Sienna or Jonathan on Mia's podcast. The oblivious couple then heads to the shower for sex, where Art silently follows them, wielding a chainsaw. Then he proceeds to gruesomely cut her in half. In a final sickening act, Art shoves the chainsaw up Cole's rectum before splitting his body in half, starting from the groin. He then uses their copious blood to create a disturbing angel on the floor. Back at home, Sienna wakes up and goes downstairs, mistakenly thinking she's overhearing Greg and Jess discussing getting rid of her. The chilling reality is far more sinister. It's Vicky malevolently mimicking their voices. Art and Vicky are already inside the house, having already murdered Greg. The villains then tie up Sienna and Jess, preparing to torture them. Between them lies a skull that Art and Vicky chillingly claim belongs to Gabby, a claim Jess vehemently refuses to believe. In a moment of defiance, Jess urges Sienna to make Art and Vicky suffer. Their torment continues as they force a tube down Jess's throat and cruelly shove a live rat into it. Using a blowtorch, they force the terrified creature further down before Vicky brutally slits Jess's throat open, allowing the rat to fall out. Vicky then taunts Sienna, revealing that the skull isn't Gabby's. At that moment, Art brings out a frightened Gabby, placing Jonathan's glasses on the skull, seemingly confirming his death and causing Sienna to scream in unbearable anguish. The entity within Vicky attempts to possess Sienna, but Sienna's will is too strong to allow it. Frustrated, Vicky believes that killing Gabby will break Sienna's resistance. Before they can harm Gabby, the little girl innocently asks if Sienna can open her gift first. Vicky cruelly allows it. When Sienna finally opens the gift, she pulls out the sword and immediately stabs Art. Freeing herself, Sienna then stabs Vicky before beheading her. As Sienna tries to finish off Art, Vicky's blood begins to melt through the floor, opening a horrifying portal to hell. Gabby is suddenly pulled into the abyss. Sienna desperately tries to use the sword to pull Gabby up, but the sharp blade cuts through Sienna's hands, and her strength isn't enough to save Gabby from falling into the portal with the sword. Sienna is left alone, consumed by agony, until the wounds on her hands miraculously heal. In that moment, she vows to do whatever it takes to rescue Gabby. Meanwhile, Art boards a bus out of town. He sits near a woman who looks increasingly frightened as he widens his eyes at her. The bus driver, noticing her discomfort, asks if she's all right. Art then pulls out his horn, gives his signature creepy smile, and lets out a disturbing honk.